Hi everyone, my name is Rushab, CEO of OneHive. We're a tech platform that spun out of Warwick University through our experience working as a student in the space. As a mechanical engineer, it's my honour and my pleasure to welcome you to the Warwick Innovation District podcast. And we're going to be talking all about CleanTech, which is all about sustainable mobility. And we've got two phenomenal individuals with us today. We've got James Black from Warwick Manufacturing Group and Tom Cox from Smart. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, and I'm going to ask you to give us your most inspiring bit of technology you're excited about to help us overcome dirty transport.
Oh, what a question. Thanks, Rushab. I'm James Black. I'm Principal Engineer at WMG, which is Warwick Manufacturing Group, department of the University of Warwick, and I lead our Clean Transport Accelerator. I think I'm going to take the Luddite perspective and say the technology solution I'm most excited about is just redesigning cities for walking. I think that cleans us up very, very quickly.
Nice.
And I'm Thomas Cox, Managing Director of Smart. I'm a mechanical engineer by background, and with quite a diverse career history that's got me here today to actually have Smart. I think myself, and it's somewhat biased, probably for the interesting material choice would actually be materials and these alternative materials that we can put into any form of mobility, micromobility, or even in the cities around us to decarbonise our built environment.
Cool. So I'm going to start with a point here, and then we'll come to that after. Walking.
Yes.
So the concept of the 15-minute city was coined in Japan as this idea of everything should be within a small 15-minute journey, regardless if it's walking or bicycling or taking the train, and it should all be accessible to remove the need for as much personal transport that's underutilized. Surely that's just a pipe dream.
It shouldn't be. So, as well as it being a concept, we see it in the research. You see when you look at trip data for things that people generally don't walk more than 20 minutes. They generally don't ride more than 20 minutes. There's a cap to what people are willing to expend on travel. And so obviously the car allows you to travel further within 20 minutes. But it's what we see people habitually doing. Now, the way that a lot of cities have developed is if you look at a city like LA, right? It's a car city. It's the 100-mile city. It's absolutely necessary to drive around it because of the way it's been designed, because of the way the districts are set up. But if you actually look at the way that town planning evolved, if you look at what makes healthy cities, it's lots of cut-throughs, it's back streets, it's lots of variety, it's diversity in the area, it's people on the streets. It's not things like big expansive parks, it's small town squares where communities can gather. So we've built cities up in a way that, yes, it is a pipe dream for a city like LA to redesign itself and suddenly be free of the motor car. I don't think that makes any sense. But when we're looking at town planning choices and how we redevelop our cities, I do think we need more mixed use areas. And when we look at manufacturing is always on the outskirts, but it's important to have that stuff within the city. And I could go on here about manufacturing having the image problem and the
makes sense.
Potential for pollution, but fundamentally it's those design choices that we make when zoning particular areas or deciding, this is where people will live, and actually we cut out some of the retail spaces or the jobs that people can have close to home. So yes, it's kind of a pipe dream, but it's also kind of how people live, but they choose their transport mode accordingly.
Yeah, so there's very few opportunities where we do get the chance to clean sheet. And Tom, I might put yourself and Neom. Are you familiar with Neom, the city in Saudi Arabia?
Oh, the
Middle East.
Yeah,
so not the wall. It's a city where they've ground up, tried to build a whole new city, considering all of this in mind, right? So even things like cars are all electrified. in tunnels underground. So there's no
Right.
cars above ground. But then one thing they forgot in their planning was any parking.
Amazing.
So they've got all these cars and nowhere to park them. Someone somewhere got told off to where.
Yeah.
So even when we have the opportunity to redesign from the ground up, we still can't get it right.
Yeah.
And so Tom, I'm intrigued to get your thoughts on, this 15-minute city, the concept of how do you think that we can take a city like Coventry, like Birmingham, or even like London, that's so dense and so built out, and try and migrate that over to something that's a little bit more conducive to cleaner mobility forms?
I think a key thing we have with these cities is somewhere we've always had that central hub. So you've always had your high street, which causes everybody to go to this one central location. And we need to start creating more communities across. So then it makes it more accessible for everyone, that you don't have to, as a city is always going to either build outwards or upwards, often both at the same time. Travelling to that central hub is harder. We're having many new developments that are being put in where you don't have the simple infrastructure of enough schools or local shopping, and there's a reliance on old existing infrastructure there. So I think we need to change that model of how we are designing them and start creating additional spokes to this central hub, and then with doing that, provide the right transportation either through public transport and have that infrastructure and investment into infrastructure that is affordable and cleaner, so that anybody can access it. Whereas at the moment, I think the barriers to entry for public transport in the UK are felt by many in terms of reliability and cost. So it's time that to support this, I think we really need to start shaking up how we are running, and probably take inspiration from other countries overseas who are embracing this model.
Yeah, I think it's one of the Nordic countries. I can't remember which one, but they are making public transport free. Whereas over here, I'm looking at a train to get from Birmingham to London costing me £50, £60. I had a look at flights to Barcelona, it's 20 quid.
Yes.
Yeah. To give you another example of this, right? So I live in Birmingham, and I wanted to get to the climbing wall, which is 3 miles from my house. So it's that weird sort of distance. Where
Is it on the other side of Spaghetti Junction?
No, it's fine.
Because that would take me
fine.
at least half an hour to navigate.
Yeah, so it's 3 miles away, and I know I can drive it in 12 minutes, according to Maps application. So, and I know that the petrol cost, because I don't have an electric car, is going to be £1.50. That's my cost to travel. If I get the bus there and back, it's going to cost me £2 each way.
Okay.
Leading a clean transport accelerator, I looked at the shared scooter mobility scheme that we've got in Birmingham, and I was like, oh, I should try this. I should be using this. If not me, then who? And I had a look at it, and I was like, okay, so there's the sign-up charge, there's a charge per mile, there's all of this. I'd have to do a day rate on it. It'll cost me £9 to take a scooter 3 miles and then back again. And that's fundamentally that's the problem we face, is that we have these established industries and these established cost structures and established infrastructure, apart from in Saudi Arabian cities, for parking and things like that. So it's really easy, convenient, quick and cheap for me to take my car. It's really difficult to take a scooter.
Yeah, micromobility is a really interesting thing, because over COVID, it proliferated. You saw a whole heap of companies spin up, turn out, a lot of out of the US, these tech companies who are asset heavy, and they're trying to, return on the investment through large fleets. All the images that you see of like publicly shared kick scooters or electric scooters just lying all over the floor. We don't really look after it. And then obviously now they've brought in systems to do that. There's only a few that have survived, and a lot of them burn a lot of money on that, versus that investment had been applied to a better cycle to work scheme, or maybe more robust technologies. And maybe this is where we could talk about some of the innovations that are coming in to support the lighter mobility sectors? Because I'm wondering, Tom, from your point of view, what do you think the biggest barrier to entry are for us just having, micro mobility solutions, not always internal combustion or big EV cars that are really heavy? What do you reckon from a sustainability or a materials point of view can we start to see?
I think a key challenge that's coming especially from a materials standpoint, is the ability to scale up with them. A lot of these companies are looking at high production volume, and the smaller organisations are unable to scale or have their infrastructure in place to meet their demands, or maybe coming out as a first supplier with no backup in the supply chain, which then introduces too much risk for these larger organisations that they don't want to embrace a new material or technology that could fail without a backup. So then people often stick to what is known, what is established, and what they are using, and there is a level of risk aversion there when it comes to then trying something different. I think in micromobility, people are certainly more brave, and they're more willing to, and that's the right scale. Whereas with some of the more so established OEMs and their mobility side, there's a lot more regulation to go through, and the volumes that they want is just, it's beyond anything that's capable within the SME space.
I think it also cuts into organisational culture as well, because if you're in an established OEM and you're buying material for a program, are you going to risk your job on a new material? Are you going to risk your
so
bonus?
there's a funny old saying where you never got fired for buying IBM.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's exactly the point, the problem that we've got. If you're playing it safe, and here's within the WMG culture and what you guys are doing, is there a point where you're finding an innovation that will truly disrupt what the organisation that you're working with are doing, but they've got an apathy and a desire or a internal reason not to take it to the next TRL?
I can't necessarily speak about some of the more interesting examples that we've got going on.
It's worth a shot.
Yeah, but I think there's a really nice bit in Lean Startup where Eric Ries is talking about how hard it is to get people to steal your ideas. So the fear in a startup is always, I can't talk about this to investors too early. I can't talk to OEMs about it because someone's going to steal it. But fundamentally, don't take the idea that you're working on, but take a list of 10 other good ideas that you've had. Deliberately try and call those people in companies and get them to steal your idea. And it's hard to do.
Yeah. Well,
people have enough of their own stuff going on to not have to do that. So I think what we're lucky in WMG to be able to deal with is people within companies who have innovation problems, and they can see they have problems, and they want to move to the next TRL. They want to move to low volume production, or to scale their production, or whatever it is they're trying to do. So we're very lucky to have that, to attract that kind of person within organisations that wants to work with us.
Yeah.
And I think in general that eases the path, so we don't tend to get too much. I think maybe one of the problems that we come up against is that often there's a continual loop between commercialization and research. So we can do some research that shows actually there's a commercial opportunity here. We start to commercialize it and run into a problem, which kicks it back into research, which means that you kind of get stuck in the same TRL for a period of time. I mean, that might be something that is happening real time to Tom.
Yes, I quite frequently that we're going through the just when you think you've got something that's good enough for industry, you always find that fault or flaw, and you need to go back to research. But it's been thankfully we're a small team, so we have the agility to go through it quickly. We have heavily used the support of Warwick University and WMG as well to help us go through the TRL challenges.
Nice.
And the Clean Transport Accelerator as well has helped from the other business perspective. That has enabled us to have that focus and really push forwards, and have that confidence as well that we don't have to have something that is perfect through and through, because we're seeking perfection instead of actually something that is commercially ready. And we need that customer to go with us on that journey now, to embrace it, to prototype us, and give us that feedback that's essential to finish off that kind of final step of the journey.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. If I was a big buyer of an OEM, why should I trust my job with you? Go on.
Because you're not afraid to take a more holistic view in terms of your material choices and the impact that it has. We would always push for take the triple bottom line approach. So people, planet, and obviously price as well. If you take all three aspects in and then look at it from a total cost point of view, the materials that we have actually achieve better in every single field. And that has the future in mind, where we're looking at end-of-life solutions as well. Every decision we're making now from forming, we're taking the planet as a stakeholder throughout. So we're getting that essential data in for life cycle and environmental impact assessment. So we have the data to back up our materials, not only in impact to the planet, but in terms of their performance metrics, while keeping a cost-sensitive price there, because we understand the challenges to move and change the material mindset needs to address all three. We've had people before, and some of the conversations that we've seen is when people have tried to move away from the materials they know, you could be buying a poorer performing material for more expensive than carbon fibre. That's not commercially viable at all. It needs to be the right price point, and our approach is we won't just sell you the material, there's a journey, and we want to go on that journey with you, because we will learn from you as much as you can learn from us. We can help you design for sustainability and the new applications, and we have invested a lot of time and effort into developing that supply chain that is ready to scale at a moment's notice. So we've been very careful into choosing our suppliers, their capabilities, and making sure that they have that future proof as well. Because I think we've seen it in many materials before, that we've made something, it's not documented, or we haven't thought about the next 10, 20 years, and now it's just in an unmarked grave somewhere on the planet, and we have absolutely no idea what to do with it.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do that.
So with OneHive, what we do, it's all about education, learning and development, but also opening people's eyes to things. So we've recently struck a partnership with UOcean, which are all about cleaning up plastic from the ocean. And phenomenal organisation, they do a huge amount of really good work. But their whole bit is they're trying to educate people such that they don't go and chuck stuff into rivers and then it ends up in the sea and it's even harder to clean up. Now, that's obviously plastic, which, when it first came out, Bakelite, that brown plastic that's still probably lurking around in people's cupboards, and all the way through to now it's deemed to be this like saving grace of a material. It's phenomenal. You could all of a sudden create something with very little cost. Toys are, everywhere. It's such a versatile material, yet now we've got to move away from it because of not just the sustainable, carbon impact of the material, but also just the environmental health aspect. And I suppose perhaps we could start with what are you seeing from an innovation to remove probably the most versatile material we've ever created as a human race?
So, I'll always start this conversation with plastics are not inherently evil. There are applications for them. The problem is in a lot of consumer behaviour and how we've started to misuse the material. So, plastic bags, like single-use plastic, that's not the idea. That's not what we should be using plastics for. But if you look at some of the products that were created in the 60s and 70s that were plastic and designed to last 100 years, that's much less of an issue compared to some of the other materials that you see that don't have the product life cycle that you associate with plastic. So it depends how it's designed, how it's used. It depends on consumer behaviour. But then on the other side of it is that I've been in the situation in industry where I'm looking for that new environmentally friendly, sustainable, bioplastic solution, but then I might have found the material and it might be buried in a department in a university. It might be available in very small quantities. If I could get it at scale, I then have to find an injection molder that's happy to work with it, happy to run it through their machines, happy that they can get the yield off it that they expect and the quality standards that we expect. And because they're risk averse, the price just goes up and up and up and up and up. And that's the difficulty, is that until, and it's starting to happen, I think Thomas kind of alluded to it there, is that carbon is becoming a lever in supply chain decisions. So having that data sheet available for the material, as banal as it sounds, gives me reassurance. I can feed this into my LCAs, I can see the difference. Yeah. I know I've got to hit this. Carbon becomes an economic lever. I can lower carbon equivalency in the product. I can pay £10 more a part, but I can get it quicker, same quality level, lower carbon. I'm in. So I think as we start to see more and more of that, some of those barriers will come down.
Cool. I'm going to switch gear a little bit. It's a clean tech. Got to talk about some form of gearboxes still exist in the future world, maybe. EVs still have gearboxes. Yeah. How'd you get, The journey to get something to market, as we found from our own personal journeys, a tech solution and a software solution in a relatively slow moving industry of education, where you're taking someone from a kid to the end of higher education. It's a 20-year process. Think about how long it takes to create a plane. It's about a similar sort of lead time. Automotive companies are working 10, 15 years in the future in terms of their planning. And so I'm going to ask Tom about your journey as a startup and as a personal journey. Well, how did you first of all decide that you were going to leave what you were doing before, uproot, and decide, right, materials, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to force an industry to change through sustainable materials, and this is better than me earning loads of money and just doing what I was doing before?
I think it was the attraction of fun, the ability, and
is it fun or is it brutal? Let's be honest. No, none of this oh, I love it all the time.
It is brutal. It's it's the hardest thing I've ever done, and I hope it is the hardest thing I will ever do, because I don't want to do anything harder than this. But it is great fun at the same time. The ability to feel your impact of your decision, and you are empowered yourself that your decision is the way you're going, right or wrong, but being able to learn from it. I think that's something I'd never got in the commercial world, from all the industries I've worked in before. There was levels of bureaucracy. It would take a long time to see these innovations, sometimes 50 years for some of the technology cycles. And the fact that we can have a team meeting, or sometimes you've got to take the chance yourself and make a decision there on the spot, and then you learn immediately from it, or you're seeing the returns. So there are plenty of late nights that go into this, but there are plenty of really, really groundbreaking moments in terms of personal development. And that's what I love about it. And then from then, the fact that we have a cause as well, that we are all deeply passionate about, that we want to make a difference, and we want to leave a positive legacy here as well. We set Smart up with the idea of legacy, making a difference, making the world a better place really for people. That's why we went into the materials market. We all dream about being millionaires and living that lifestyle that comes with it, but that's a long way away. And right now we want to focus on sustainable growth ourselves. So you trade the discussions, the arguments with the late nights where you're up to 4 a.m. or something crazy like that, writing an Innovate UK bid, because that's passion, and it's the ability to be passionate about something, own it, and really just see it through. Where as we grow, there will be challenges in terms of giving part of it away, because we fall into the trap of it being your baby and the knowledge you have. But that's exciting. I love the uncertainty that comes with it, and I think that if we all live our lives too risk averse and we don't push ourselves outside that comfort zone, I don't think we're getting the best out of it. And I'm not saying that you have to start your own business. It's not for everyone, and I would recommend people think long and hard if they're willing and ready to do it, because it will be a painful journey. But if you do go on it, it's a fantastic journey. So yeah, that was really the motivation for it.
Nice. So from James, from your side, from running an accelerator, CleanTech, sustainable, accelerator, on the other side of seeing all these passionate, Tom, hugely passionate, right? And everything that we are all doing is driven, motivated. That's what you got on one side. The other side is a pragmatic view of, right, like only 1 in 10 of these companies are going to succeed.
Less than that.
If that.
Yeah.
Like what do you think can be done? What are the things that you're currently doing to maximize the success of these companies? Because the more people like Tom that make it, quite frankly, that's the world I want to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we do it. That's why we have it. That's why Clean Transport Accelerator exists. This is how we need that innovation. And we need that success rate to be higher. There's so many challenges associated with it. Whether it's a materials company, if you're, say you want to launch a new electric vehicle and you want that to be your startup,
a lot of money.
Yeah, it's such a journey. And the 1 in 10 figure, like the best VC firms in the world maybe get 1 in 10, and they're supposed to be the best at it in the world.
I dispute they are, because if you're banking on 1 out of 10, what are you doing? The other way, it's like the Warren Buffett approach, is find a company that you think is good, you align with, and then double down on it. Don't spread bet.
Yeah.
But the VC model is very much, we've got lots of cash, we'll plow it in, something's bound to work.
I think it depends a lot on the fund.
Yeah.
But obviously the goal is always asymmetric gains. So you're always looking to offset your losses with massive gains on the ones that you do hit. So there was always I'd be very alarmed at any fund that had 100% hit rate.
No, of course.
That would concern me.
It's insider knowledge.
Yeah, there's something.
Sorry, a little bit.
Yeah, something very weird is happening there. So how do you de-risk some of that? And what we try and do on the accelerator is try and look at the entrepreneur holistically, or as a human being with a range of skill sets. So Tom won't, having gone through the accelerator, Tom won't actually know some of the thinking behind some of the activities that he's gone through, but there's some core knowledge that I think benefits every entrepreneur, and that's around product market fit.
Yep.
What is it? How do you know if you have it? How do you know if you don't have it? When do you stop doing something? How do you calibrate? My personal opinion is that Dragon's Den has messed things up for most entrepreneurs, and it's given us this binary idea of I'm in or I'm out, you're right or you're wrong. Suddenly everybody is a good judge of, that business is going to work, and the reality is you don't know.
No.
And it's about calibration, subtle calibration over time. And then it's do you have the runway to survive long enough to find out if you can get to product market fit? So it is very much it's a timing thing, it's a resilience thing, it's being open to criticism, but also being able to understand, hey, VCs are supposed to be the best guessers in the world and they don't have a clue, so why do I value this person's opinion? So it's a little bit of focusing on your vision, and that's kind of what we try and do is make sure that people leave the accelerator with an improvement in their knowledge, so they can understand, we want to work in a lean way, we want to test hypotheses, and we want to build quickly, we want to take a customer market focused approach, but then at the same time come out better at presenting, better at communicating your ideas, better at working with other people, better at creative thinking, creative problem solving, with a better peer network of other founders and a better idea of the ecosystem. And then we also try and inject a little bit of funding knowledge as well. So, Tom mentioned writing innovate bids, like how do you access some of that stuff, some of that public funding? When's the right time to use it? What are the implications of actually winning it? Because quite often, we've seen plenty of companies win it, but then not have the cash themselves to spend, match
or
funds,
invest, which
which means they lose the grant. we've had companies with investors who say, yeah, oh, you've won the grant, fantastic, we'll match fund that. But then the investor pulls out, they lose the grant, and suddenly the company has no runway, overnight, cliff edge, and done. So it's how do you avoid situations like that? Like, when's the right time to bootstrap? When's the right time to look at debt? When's the right time to look at equity?
Yeah.
And there's no easy answers to any of this. It's all individual, but that's what we try and do, is kind of look at it as you are human beings and you come into an accelerator program and hopefully you leave better equipped for either this business, your next business, or your next role.
Actually,
what more can we do?
Yeah, well, that makes sense. So the other side of things, going to another gear now, maybe reverse. We'll see. Electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned, if an EV car or an EV startup is like truly your passion, what you think you want to bring to the world, you can see OEMs backpedaling already on their commitments.
Yep.
You've seen the UK government backpedal on the EV stance on, we need to be all EV by 2030, and therefore all of that's happening. We see battery technology struggling in heavier duty applications where arguably there's more impact that's had, especially when the majority of cars sit idle and parked for most of the day. Things like the Volvo released a report with the XC40, and they did a life cycle assessment of both the internal combustion version and the EV. So straight out the gates, the EV is double the amount of carbon invested into the vehicle. Now, it takes a return of investment of mileage to see that break-even point. I'm going to ask you to guess, with the EU blend of energy supplying the electricity going into your thing, how many kilometers do you reckon it takes for an EV XC40 to break even on internal combustion?
On internal combustion, 150,000.
What's your guess, Tom?
I was going hopefully optimistic on, say, 80,000.
Cool. So it's 100,000 kilometers considering the European 28 countries blend of electricity. If you take global, 150. If you take wind, it's 50,000 kilometers. And then the other question is, when was the last time an OEM warranted their vehicle to 50,000 kilometers, or 100,000 kilometers, or even 150,000 kilometers?
I'm pretty sure Toyota's is 10 years or 100,000 miles.
Do you reckon?
I think it is.
Yeah, but Toyota are winning.
Yeah.
Surely.
Yeah. I think they still do that.
Yeah.
That's probably the only company I can think of that does it.
So they back their quality.
Yeah.
But I think it just goes to show that the investment made into the EV to start with is so high and carbon intensive such that it's going to take a long time, and chances are you're going to total your car before then. Right?
This is the other thing, is the ownership models have changed. So like, how many OEMs now, like financing is a key part of their business, and if we are changing our cars every 2 years, like we're not responsibly using the product to its end of life. Consumer behaviours are driving a lot of that, and that's I still drive a 10-year-old Yaris, which is why I have the Toyota warranty. But I will run it until it doesn't work anymore, because you've got to pay that carbon back.
So Tom, from obviously you're working on new materials, a lot can be learned from repurposing old and reusing. How does the recycling or repurposing or reuse of materials feed into the new materials that you are? Have you got any examples, things that you're able to bring to market that uses old stuff?
Yeah, quite a lot. Well, all of the materials that we're working with are using thermoplastics, so it's already got that level of circularity and recyclability at the end of it. And then we even have some of the materials that we offer are made from waste in the manufacturing process, which actually can give a really nice finish to it. So it's kind of like especially in the carbon fibre one, it gives like a camouflage look for carbon fibre. It's novel, it's distinct, but I think actually people will really like what they see there. So everything we're doing is focused either on that natural fibre where we're growing it and it's actually negative carbon at the start of its journey and gives you that right advantage on the right side of zero. And then by using that with a thermoplastic composite as well, that means that you have end-of-life solutions so that when the vehicle has been scrapped or is being taken back by an OEM or whoever it's going to be, there is actually then hope for that material, that it's not just ending up in landfill. And the advantage is with some of the materials that we're using, they're actually lighter weight than what's currently out there. So then in terms of EV ownership, as cars are getting heavier for the larger batteries, the range extenders, and are pushing closer to the 3.5 ton limit now for vehicles on the road before it becomes that next gear up, we need to find ways of reducing weight wherever possible. So you can actually put less material in, so we can reduce the amount of material on a car, which means there is a larger battery, which means you can get that trade-off quicker. And then also less material, less waste. Even if it were to be downcycled as such, instead of going back in at virgin grade, that's still less material being downcycled, which is a significant step change forward from the world we're currently living in. And I think actually there is legislation coming out there as well for future vehicles where they have to have a percentage of recycled material back in use in the vehicle. Yeah. So by providing this material that can be recycled, it then means the OEM can then include that in their next vehicle. So you can see this material over generations of cars. And I think if I go back to what I said earlier about leaving a legacy there, you could have material that's on a car, say in 2026, still being used in the vehicle 2040, 2045. It's not just being burnt off or sitting in the ground somewhere doing some eutrophication or floating in a waterway. It's definitely not what we want.
No, interesting. So I suppose it's been a really interesting conversation and there's lots of different avenues and angles. My sort of last question for you both is, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about the mobility sector, the area you work in, like one fix, might be this politician listens to you and puts in this legislation, it might be funding comes in like that, or whatever it might be. What is your wish, James?
So mine is funding. So what you see with a lot of, and we've dealt with maybe nearly 100 businesses on the Clean Transport Accelerator. So every single one of those businesses has a cash flow problem. They are new businesses. A lot of them require heavy capex spend in order to scale or produce their prototypes. But we're in, as far as angel investment or as far as VC investment goes at the minute, it's the tightest it's ever been. Supply chain concerns, there's a real awareness of if you're investing in hardware, there's manufacturing issues, there's going to be capex spend required, more funding is going to be needed than the initial tranche that you get. So there's a real risk-off appetite from whether it's VC funds, unless they're specifically geared towards clean tech or clean transport. A lot of angel investors, if it's not software, they're not going to see a 10x return. Yeah. So for me, it's unlocking that. How do you kind of give a company its first couple of 100K, first million to actually get up and getting some of this stuff to market? And yeah, it's risky, but that's how we unlock some of the, we started this by talking about hit rates and how much we need this innovation. Some of it needs to be funded because individuals can't fund this themselves. Banks won't fund it. Nope. It has to be investors, and they have to take on risk, and they have to be willing to take on risk. So if I could wave that magic wand, is give investors more risk appetite for clean tech.
Makes sense.
For myself, the UK in an entity needs a manufacturing strategy. We do not have one, and I think we're seeing the damage it's doing in terms of, say, for funding as a part of it, but since making some political decisions over, I'll say, the last decade, it's definitely made the climate harder for a UK manufacturing business to survive. The country needs a strategy because then we can address the skills the finances and actually get the support mechanisms to help with setting up, scaling up, and accessing these OEMs. We went through the phase of offshoring all of our manufacturing, and many of the large organisations now are seeing a need to reshore because of instability within global supply chains, even more recent political events that are shaking the world. And there's so much uncertainty there that has been felt through this offshoring. We now need to invest internally. And that starts with a strategy and some form of representation at Westminster, where we can actually start influencing and challenging policy. And I think once we start there, then we can start looking at how can we re-establish our position as a top manufacturer. Very recently, we just fell out the top 10 globally, which I think actually quite a lot of people were surprised we were a top 10 manufacturing country, because we are generally more service-based. But now with challenges at the border to import, export, and the complexities that we've done and we've introduced with dealing with the rest of the world, there needs to be that local investment. And if we are going to make a difference to the future of skills, the planet as well, we need to stop moving materials around on ships or planes. I think something that's really prevalent for what we do is the UK imports over 80% of its fibres for composite use, which is an incredible amount. If we were to just reduce that number by 5, 10, or even half it, something, if we were to move in that direction, the impact that's alone, reducing the level of import and the benefit to the UK economy would be huge, let alone the benefits to the planet as well. So I think for me, it starts with a strategy from Westminster, that we need to have somebody focusing on manufacturing, and I would love to say materials as well, but manufacturing.
I feel like I should change my answer to Tom's.
I thought Tom was going to say funding. Just give us some money for a startup.
They should have been the other way around.
But no, but that makes sense. Obviously, look, a manufacturing strategy is entirely needed. Funding and more risk appetite is needed. I think skills and awareness is my piece. The bit we haven't really touched about is, are we ready for the innovation? Have you got the right knowledge in those, these engineers that are leading or senior leaders of these businesses who ultimately went to university probably 30 years ago plus? That's the core knowledge. Yes, they've picked up a lot along the way, but surely there should be more focus on, teaching them about circular economy, scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, actually understanding what new technology is coming to the fore, and therefore how they can start to integrate that into their 3, 5, 10-year strategies that are building, because they're all publicly listed companies. They've got to operate within that sort of time frame, but they can't risk it. And the best way to de-risk something, in my opinion, is always education.
So this, again, it's a big conversation, right? And one of the reasons we developed a future manufacturing leaders program within WMG, specifically for small manufacturing businesses, because there's been research done that looks at the productivity puzzle that we have in UK manufacturing, and I think it found that if you were able to shift the perceived quality of your leadership by 1 standard deviation, you saw a 10% uplift in productivity. Wow. Which is pretty spicy. If you think about the most problematic firms were small manufacturing firms that were family owned, where control rested with the eldest son. We have a lack of diversity in manufacturing. It's a massive problem because it affects how we lead, it affects how we innovate, it affects what gets to market, it affects how firms grow, how
attitude to change.
Yeah, and it's that learning how to lead for innovation. How do you lead for sustainability? And maybe it comes under that heading, to be more sustainable is about innovation, is about funding, is about the strategy side and the wider piece of it.
All makes sense. Well, thank you so much for the time and joining us between a few bits of shrubbery and the My Innovation podcast. So that there's going to be more like this. There's going to be different topics, different themes. We're going to look at different sectors. It's not only about CleanTech, although this is a really important vertical. It's how the latest, the new technologies across everything from create tech, med tech, all have this synergy, and they all do come together because everything from health and well-being stems from walking more, right? The materials that you're developing need to be created in a way and inspire the next generation to actually want to get involved. We need more diversity. We've got a female founders program that we're working on. So all of this has to come together, and what we're starting to see is that fall under the Warwick Innovation District and what we are building here and you're driving forces for. So thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.